Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to continue to talk about living and moving abroad because I felt so inspired for this topic recently and I've thought of a new thing that I want to talk about. What are some of the things that I do when I first move abroad in the first weeks, months, it can be several months even into the process, but what are the first things that I want to do to make myself feel at home, to make myself feel cozy and comfortable and inspired in a new place? At the beginning of this year I made a video about the struggle that I've been feeling, particularly with this last move, but all of my moves a little bit, to actually settle down in a more philosophical way, I guess, a more mental way. But today I want to talk about not exactly the counter to that, but some of the more concrete things that I do that help me feel a little bit more rooted in the place. Basically, what are my priorities? What are some of the first things that I do, that I look for, that I'm thinking about when I move to a new place? Specifically, I'm going to be focusing the most on my last move, so from Montreal in Canada to The Hague in the Netherlands, but I will also reference different moves that I've made at different stages, and you can check out a playlist that I have of so many different things about living abroad or moving abroad if you're curious where I've lived before and what sort of, I guess, stage I've been in at these various times of my life. Maybe some of these will be super relatable to you. Maybe some of them will not even be at the beginning of your mind if and when you might move abroad, or if you have in the past. I would love to know your experiences in the comments below. Let me know what you have in common, maybe what you don't have in common as well. The very first thing is something that is super predictable if you have been here for a while, and that is the cats. My husband and I absolutely love our cats, and we revolve many aspects of our life around them, to be completely honest, and I'm not ashamed to say it. We consider our cats in where we live, the types of things that we have in our apartment. I'm thinking about their nutrition. When you move to a different country especially, you might end up having to switch their foods. All these things come into consideration when you have a pet and when you love and prioritize that pet as much as we do. And that's one of the first things that I think about when I'm thinking about moving to a new place and getting settled. When it comes to things like the vet especially, it's really for peace of mind. We might not need to see a vet right away. It might be a while before their next annual visit and they might be in great health, but just knowing that we have an appointment, we have an office, we are registered in someone's system if something would happen, or just knowing that we're not going to miss that annual appointment that they need to have for their checkups and vaccines and whatever, that's more so for peace of mind. Of course, things like nutrition, having trees and scratchers and places for them to nap. This is really important for me and my husband, but also for them and their quality of life. We can find enrichment in our lives in so many ways. We leave the apartment, we go out, we go to places, we see people, we do things, but for them, this place that we live is their entire world. What we provide for them is all that they have. And I'm not just talking about physical things and, spending lots of money on them, but just what kind of environment we organize for them with what we have. That also contributes hugely to just how cozy and comfortable I feel personally. It is a little bit selfish in the sense that if I feel like I'm providing a good space for my cats, if I feel like they're happy and they're fulfilled in the new place, I will automatically feel better. And I will also feel more free to go out and explore, to go out and do different things and to leave them for, reasonable amounts of time, obviously, but I'll feel better about living my own life if I feel like they have enrichment and happiness in the home that I'm providing for them. Another probably pretty predictable thing is revolved around coffee. You guys know I love my coffee. Today I'm drinking tea because I'm recording in the afternoon. I've already hit my quota on coffee today, but this is a little bit in two parts. First of all is finding coffee shops. Actually, I should call them cafes because I live in the Netherlands right now. Be careful with coffee shop versus cafe in this country. But I love to find spots that I can go out and grab a coffee, whether it's just a takeaway or a quick, sit for 15 minutes and enjoy a sip, or whether it's taking my computer or a book or something and staying for a longer period of time. I love to find places that feel comfortable, that feel a little bit like a routine. Sometimes I like to try something new, but a lot of times when I want a coffee to go, or if I just want to take a quick break from whatever I'm doing at home, I want it to feel comfortable and something I've done before. I love to hit the same spots over and over when it comes to coffee, and occasionally branch out and occasionally try something new. But I want to find those, 2, 3, 4 spots that are kind of my default places where if I need a break, if I need to just get out and, have a little walk, I know where I can go to get a coffee. The second part of this one is my coffee maker at home. I want to know how I'm gonna make my coffee in the morning, and I wanna have that determined from very early on when I move to a new place. I've actually made an entire video, I will link it up here, about how I've made coffee in different places that I've lived. Some of this has had to do with the place that I live and kind of what's typical or what's more natural for me in that moment. I go into a lot more detail in the video itself, so I will leave that for that video if you wanna watch that one. Whatever kind of coffee that I'm making in that moment, I wanna have that routine established pretty early on when I move to a new place, and that gives me so much security and so much comfort, honestly. And it might sound silly if you're not a coffee person or if you're not necessarily a morning routine sort of person, although I think we probably all have those 1 or 2 things that we like to do in the morning, be it just like washing your face or putting on your day clothes. Some people that's super important. For me, I stay in sweatpants if I'm not gonna leave the apartment. That's just me. But I do get ready in the morning, even if I just stay at home. And part of that sort of getting ready process for me is absolutely my coffee. It's probably the most important part of my morning. And without that, I am a little bit lost, to be honest. It might be a little bit of a problem, but you know, we don't judge. Another thing that is really important to me is having access to music, specifically to a musical instrument. So violin is my primary instrument. It's the one that I've played since I was very young, and I was in orchestra for like all of my high school and university days. So violin you would think would be my first one, but because violin is a little bit harder to play, not only by myself, but also in an apartment context, I'm a little bit more self-conscious, even though there actually is somebody in the building who plays flute, and I've heard it, not from my apartment, but from the hallway. So there are other musicians in this building. But still, I'm a little bit, you know, I've talked about this before, I'm a little bit self-conscious about playing violin in an apartment. What has become extremely important for me is to have a guitar. I taught myself some guitar when I was, I think, a teenager, maybe early teenager, and that's something that has been important to me for quite a long time, but having access to that instrument from not necessarily day one, but from the early days of getting settled into a new place has been so important for me. And just having moments to myself, having moments where I can express myself or even just kind of let my mind wander a little bit, focus on something that's not work, that's not writing, that's not moving stress and admin and stuff like that, and just having those moments to chill. In a similar vein, it's really important for me to have a bit of a reading routine as well. So primarily just a reading spot, someplace that I go and is kind of my default mode for reading. Since Montreal, so in Montreal and here in The Hague, that has been the couch. Our couch has been a really nice spot both times for, you know, some natural sunlight coming through a window, and we have a little coffee table, and I've started just putting whatever book or books, but lately I'm trying to limit it to one book. Whatever book I'm reading, I put it on the coffee table, and that's sort of its default location. So that way, when I feel like reading, I can just, you know, make myself a cup of coffee or tea, plunk down on the sofa. Usually I have a cat who comes and climbs on my lap. If it's in the morning, it's Bingley. If it's in the afternoon, it's Hamlet. And my book's right there. I just grab my book and start reading. It's very cozy. It's very, you know, natural and habitual. And for me, at least, that has been very helpful in reading more, or just reading more focused, concentratedly. I'm looking for an adverb, more focusedly. That doesn't work. Being more focused when I'm reading. Sometimes I like to read in different places, like on my bed or go to a coffee shop, like I mentioned. But a lot of times I will just want whatever my typical go-to plan is for reading. And that has been really helpful in feeling a little bit cozier at home. The next big priority that I have when I move to a new place is to hang stuff on the walls. Like, for example, this. Well, that's not hung, that's stuck. But it's there and it works for now. And I have so many, I have plenty of other, you know, posters and frames and things that my husband and I love to have hanging in our apartment that we've collected from over the years of our different places that we've lived. This is something I did not prioritize nearly as much in my first few moves. It would sometimes take me months, even a year, 2, 3 years, before I would think about putting stuff on the walls, or I would just very slowly put an occasional thing on the wall. I did not realize how important this at least could be to me, and how much this can make me feel a lot more happy at home, like honestly just more comfortable. We've lived in a lot of big cities, and one thing that is pretty typical in basically all of these cities is that the walls tend to be like completely plain white. They have like 1,000 coats of white paint on them from so many different tenants. Somehow still manages to be like scratches and scuffs and, you know, random dents and stuff in the walls from who knows what and how many years ago and how many residents ago. There are just so many things that make it feel a little bit impersonal, and there are so many remnants, I guess, of just past tenants and past people who have lived there. It really can very easily feel like you are living in somebody else's place, or like a white box sometimes if you don't put stuff on the walls. So I've discovered that doing this within the first few weeks ideally, but even if, you know, it might take you a month or two to figure out where you want stuff and how you want stuff, but just start putting stuff up even in a temporary way, even using like the little sticky tack stuff that I used for that poster and some other things before you want to put nails on the wall or whatever. You know, however you're going to do it. I'm not going to encourage you to put nails on the wall of your rental apartment. You didn't get that idea from me. It can make such a big difference. It can just add a little bit of personality to your space. It can make those walls feel a little bit less like 1,000 coats of white paint and a little bit more like yours, because you look up at the walls or you sit down on your couch and you're just in this space surrounded by a little bit more of you. And also, if you put them in different spots and in different arrangements from your past apartments, it can help you feel a little bit more, I guess, unique in your new space, because you don't necessarily want to match every other place that you've lived. Every apartment that I've moved to has been quite different in how I'm like forced to arrange it based on its layout and all of that. So, you know, doing it a little bit differently in every apartment kind of helped me feel a little bit more fresh, but also me, like a little bit more like I own the space. It's my space. Millennials watching, hold back the urge to make a MySpace joke, please. Let's talk about fitness for a hot minute. Exercise is actually something that has become extremely important for me. I have had a different exercise habit in every place that I've lived. It's been based on whatever is available to me, like how close the nearest gym is, for example, or whatever sort of mode I'm in. When I first moved to Paris, my husband and I lived pretty close to a nice gym, and actually every apartment that we lived in Paris, we were not too far from a decent gym. So we had gym memberships at that point. Then the pandemic hit and I started doing Pilates. So when I moved to New York, things were still a little bit weird from the pandemic, and I continued to do at-home Pilates. I love to watch YouTube videos with different routines and stuff like that and just kind of do my own fitness at home. When we moved to Montreal, we had a little gym that we were able to go to, and here in The Hague, we don't live close to a good gym, unfortunately, but we have started bouldering, indoor climbing basically. So that is our sort of fitness of choice. It's our activity, like active activity of choice right now. Once I kind of find whatever it is that's going to motivate me and inspire me to move in that new place, I feel much, much better. It's important to just find that outlet, whatever it might be. Movement is just, it's so good for your mental health. It's so good for your inspiration. As creative people, we need some sort of physical movement and activity to help us feel inspired, because sitting at a computer is just not inspiring. It does not do it. You need some sort of other, thing going for you, something physical, something that gets you moving. So I feel like I've said moving and movement a lot. I'm not trying to become a fitness guru here. I'm just saying it's important, and finding whatever it is that's going to work for me in that new place is definitely one of my top priorities when I move. Let's talk about food now, the other like really important basic of life. I love to have a favorite restaurant, or maybe like a couple of favorite restaurants, but usually I'd like to find kind of one that is my go-to when I'm really just feeling like I want something comfortable, I want something that is familiar to me. I like to have a favorite. But when you move to a different place, especially a different country that you've never been to, you lose all of those sort of comfort places and go-to options that you have made in your past home. And that can be one of the most destabilizing things, I think. This is really hard at the beginning, because at the beginning you are completely like in the unknown, unless you are lucky enough to have friends already in that place who can give you recommendations, or, in my case, I could ask people on Instagram or here on YouTube to give me recommendations if they know anything about the city. Although I'm not sure a lot of you guys knew anything about The Hague before I moved here. Point being, you still have to get out there and try new places, and take those chances that maybe it's not going to be a favorite. And this is something that will grow and evolve over time as well. So you might, in the first month, you might find something that you really, really like, but then 3 or 4 months later, you try a different place and you decide actually that's way better than the other place, and that becomes your new favorite. And even if you have, 4 or 5 favorites, it's also nice to continue to try and get out there and, experiment with new things. But it will grow and evolve over time. And I think that's actually one of the most fun aspects of this. So you might have a favorite restaurant for a while, and then it'll change to a different favorite restaurant, or maybe you'll just add more to your favorites list over time. But I do still like to get working on this from the sort of first weeks that I'm in a new place, because food is super important. I can be very nostalgic about certain foods, not just foods from like growing up, but food that I had in Paris, food that I had in New York, food that I had in Montreal. I will miss it really badly when I move to a different place. So that's something that I definitely start chipping away at when I first get to a new place. I like to start, little by little, going out, trying new things, and trying new things that I think could be a favorite. So for example, my husband and I are huge fans of Indian food. We have absolutely loved it for a very long time. So that tends to be the first place that I kind of start. If I can find a really good Indian restaurant someplace, then I'm happy. And then I can slowly start, branching out and evolving that list a little bit. We're gonna go super practical for a second, but another important thing, just in terms of more practical home things, is extension cords. Okay, this is maybe too practical, but I couldn't help but put it on the list anyway. For me, as somebody who is techie in the sense that I am always doing something electronic, be it my phone, my computer, video games. When I move to a new place, something that's very important just on the practical level of making my home feel a little bit more natural and where I can form those habits more easily is to know where I'm gonna plug stuff in. So, having charger areas in places where I'm gonna spend the most time on my computer or on my phone. It might sound silly, or maybe it sounds super relatable if you're like me, but I like to know where the plugs are. I like to have the extension cords and whatever, types of plugs that I need in the right spots so that I can just kind of live my daily life without having to think about those things or drag cords around or figure out how I'm going to, if I want to work on the couch, how am I going to get the cable, to my computer, because my computer's going to die, my laptop's going to die if I don't have a charger. So having those things kind of set up, figuring out where I like to work and where I like to I don't know, plug in my toaster. That's a weird example, but things like the vacuum, like there's all kinds of things that you have that are not even necessarily techie that is nice to have that routine for when you get to a new place. And you will have different places of, you know, working and different places that you store things and all of that. Maybe it sounds silly. If it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you. But for me, every time I come to a new place, figuring that out is just really key. There you have it. Let's see how relatable that one is for everybody. This one's pretty obvious, but support groups are very important when you first get to a place. And this is a little bit twofold. So firstly, the most obvious is making new friends, making new connections, forming a new sort of support group. It can be one big group, or it can be just multiple different ones, or just a few really good one-on-one friendships that you have. The sun just decided to do something completely different, so the entire lighting has changed. Sorry about that. And here it comes again. Okay, well, again, this is something that will be a very long-term sort of work in progress. It's something that can take weeks, months, even years in a new place. You might have friends who come and go like any other place, but especially when you're living abroad, you might find yourself in circles that are a little bit more temporary. That is definitely the situation that my husband and I have often found ourselves in. So it's a little bit tricky, you know, it's just something that takes time, but it's something that I think it's important, at least for me, to start from as early as I possibly can. The second part of this one, having to do with support groups, is to make sure that you maintain whatever your existing support group is as well, especially if you're moving to different time zones, or if something in your routine or your friend's routine drastically changes when you move. It might be like a very new routine that you have to establish. When I was living in North America, my routine with talking with my friends who were either in Europe or in North America, especially my family who are all in North America, that can change now that I am in a different time zone. That's something that it's important to nourish, it's important to think about. Don't just drop, you know, people who are important to you because suddenly it's maybe more difficult. I know that there's also the aspect of potentially friends dropping you and not necessarily being good friends long distance. That is something that I'm quite grateful for, in the sense that, you know, I've moved so many times and a lot of my friends also have moved. I think we're pretty good at managing this and navigating this, but there are some friendships that will fade. There are some friendships that will grow and blossom. And that's just part of it. Definitely, at least from my side, I try not to be the one who lets something fall apart if I don't want to. If it's a friendship that means something to me, I need to nourish it as much as they do. And maybe this sounds like a lot of work. I don't want to talk about friendship in the sense that it's like an obligation, but it is important for you and for them. And sometimes it does take a little bit of maintenance and work, especially when you move abroad. So try and establish those routines and form those new habits fairly early on so that you don't lose touch with people that you don't want to lose touch with. And then things get easier, and you know, whatever the new routine is, the new go-to way of communicating or frequency of communicating, you can be secure in it a lot faster if you establish that from the beginning. So I'm gonna wrap up this video here, but I feel like I could make an entire second video with like 10 more things that are super important to me, not necessarily descending order of priorities, but just other things that I like to think about, lifestyle sorts of things, hobby sorts of things that make a huge difference in making me feel more comfortable and forming my new routine. So all of that to say, if you would like to see a part 2, let me know in the comments below. I would also love to hear if you agree with some of these, if you are completely unlike me in some of these, if there are any things that you absolutely would want on your list, be it from past experiences that you've had of moving abroad, or maybe you haven't moved abroad before, but you just kind of want to imagine. It's actually kind of fun to think about these things. What do you think would be your top priorities for your hobbies, for your inspiration, for your sort of day-to-day, ignoring the admin and the practical and all of that, but just thinking about what would make you happy and what would make you feel cozy and inspired. It's a fun little exercise, so feel free to leave some stuff in the comments below. Don't forget to give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. That really helps me out and lets me know what sorts of videos you're liking more than others. And if you're not subscribed to the channel already, be sure to subscribe so you can see part 2 if enough people want it. I'm really loving this living abroad sort of niche, but I also talk about, you know, books and music and writing and all of the sort of creative hobbies that fuel me in my day-to-day. So I will be talking a lot more about those in videos to come. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you very soon in another video.